Hello, Serious Survivor here, and this video is going to focus on how a breakdown in the supply chain can lead to and cause food shortages and eventually lead to an economic collapse, which could quite easily fall into an SHTF food riot type of situation, which could even lead to something severe such as martial law or even worse. So we'll focus on how a disruption in the supply chain can steamroll into much larger and more severe events, and we see some of this unfolding in front of us, as we speak. Shortages of parts and supplies are one of the main contributors to causing an economic downturn during a supply chain disruption. And the reason for this is manufacturers rely on just-in-time delivery, which means they get their products to assemble their own products with when they need them and not beforehand. So these are not stored in warehouses and stockpiled in cases of emergency or disruptions in the chain. Instead, they're relying on luck, basically, that nothing will go wrong and there will be no disruptions in the supply chain. The problem with relying on luck is at some point in time that luck is going to run out. And as we see with what's going on in the world around us right now, that the supply chain disruption is actually at the bottom tier of the news, but it's one of the most severe issues that we're going to face if something doesn't turn around there. Because a shortage of parts for a company to manufacture a product means that they have to stop manufacturing that product, which means in turn they're not going to be able to sell that product, which in turn means they're not going to be able to pay their employees. So a small disruption in the supply chain could affect people temporarily for just a few days, but something more severe than that, like we're seeing with semiconductors and a lot of other products on the market, we're seeing this right now, and this is actually in the beginning stages of turning into something severe, because car companies and other manufacturing facilities are not going to be able to keep paying their employees. Once they stop paying their employees, then we're looking at a lot of people drawing unemployment, which takes money away from the government and in turn puts the government further in debt and causes less spending. If people are making less money, they spend less money. And this has, like we said, a steamroll effect. It's going to keep building and building and building. With each shortage that we see, it's going to cost more jobs, it's going to hurt more people, and it's going to impact the economy at a percentage higher than we've ever seen. Gas prices are also a part of this. With the closure of the pipeline that we saw earlier, then gas prices have actually started to increase somewhat. There hasn't been a dramatic increase from what we've seen so far, but this increase is enough to see a few pennies increase on the products that we buy. And as the gas prices go up, then the cost of the products that are delivered are going to go up in turn. And if we already have people losing their jobs due to shortages, then this is going to make it more difficult for them to purchase the goods and supplies they need to just take care of their families. Gasoline prices are in the middle of everything. Gasoline prices can damage the supply chain, they can increase the cost of goods, they can keep us from being able to go to work and back. And as these continue to increase, then we're going to see a bigger impact on our financial sector as far as the products we buy. We're going to start seeing increases like we haven't seen in years. Prices are already higher than ever. And as gas prices continue to rise, then you can expect consumer goods to rise at the same level and sometimes even more. Now, disruption in the supply chain, we think about the facilities and we think about the end users, but we don't think about the people that are working to load the trucks, to drive the trucks, to load the trains, to drive the trains and things like that. These people are going to be affected also. As their products decrease that they're able to supply with delivery, then they're going to see a decrease in their workforce, therefore once again adding to the unemployment toll. The only ones who are not going to personally be affected by a major disruption in the supply chain are those who had the forethought to actually store goods and supplies ahead of time. And some may ask how this could lead to a food shortage, and this is sort of debatable, but the fact is that a lot of farmers, especially when you talk about your smaller farms, not your industrial size or scale farms, but the smaller farms are not making the biggest profit in the world. So as the cost of their goods go up, then they're going to have to increase the cost of the products that they produce on their farm. And the problem with that is smaller businesses can't compete with larger businesses on a price level. You can't compete with Walmart with a mom and pop store, because that mom and pop store does a much smaller volume of sales. They have to make a little bit more per product to be able to keep themselves afloat. With a large company like Walmart or any one of these chain stores, even if they're only making a few cents per product they sell such a high volume that they can take a hit. Then the smaller businesses are not going to be able to. And we saw a lot of this over the last year with all the closures of the small businesses, and with this disruption in the supply chain that we're experiencing and higher unemployment rates, along with all the other turmoil we see, then we can expect more of these businesses to close. And our nation can only financially withstand that for so long. So with the cost of gas going up, the cost of supplies going up, if they're even available due to disruptions that we've seen, then the food cost in turn will rise, making those prices extremely high. And for those that have lost their job, they're going to have to make the choice between purchasing the food or paying their rent. So this is also going to lead to a very large increase in homelessness and evictions and things like that. Now, once it's got to that stage, then we're pretty much headed to an economic collapse at that point. And with a full economic collapse, if we look back, a lot of people like to compare today to the crash back in the 20s. There were, less than 30% of people out of work. I mean, that's a huge part of the population, but at that point in time, there were still enough people working that the government and the country were able to still maintain at least somewhat until they pulled out and everybody started working again. The difference with it these days is, first of all, there are so many people in the nation, in the world. There are a lot more people in the United States now than there were in the 1920s. So this increase in population obviously increases the cost of homelessness, of unemployment, and of other things, not just to the government, but to people who are still working, paying taxes. And that's another thing we could expect to see an increase in when the economy takes a downturn, or is an increase in taxes to help the government maintain its revenue. And this is going to have a huge impact on everyone, just like the other aspects we're talking about. And with the combination of these types of events with a high unemployment rate and the other factors that we had discussed, then this is definitely going to collapse us on an economic level. This is going to make our economy fall flat. When that happens, then things are going to take a turn for the worse. And we could expect to see food riots begin if we're having food shortages, and also the cost of inflation is too much for people to even live anymore. Then we're going to begin to see more riots. We're going to begin to see more unrest. And when it comes to seeing more riots and more unrest, then basically there's only two ways it can go at that point. The rioters are going to take over the cities that they're rioting in, or the police are going to step in at some point and have to stop them. And that's one of the big questions that we're seeing right now with some of the rioting that we've seen go on, is that no one is actually stopping them. So when the riots begin again, then this could quite possibly lead to a military intervention. I don't believe that would happen and that martial law would be declared, but I want to leave it out there as a possibility. The biggest fear of this, for me, the biggest fear of this is not so much our government declaring martial law, because I do see that a little more far-fetched than the other possibility here, and that's China buying us out. When all of the companies in the U.S. are in debt and going out of business because they can't afford it, then I believe a country like China would step in and they would attempt to bail out these companies by helping them financially in turn for stocks or shares in their company, or a percentage of ownership in it. Maybe even outright ownership in some cases. This could be the opportunity for another nation to step into the United States and take us over from within. And that's where the real danger lies, I believe. Well, I just wanted to look at how that could lead. That's one theory about how it can lead from a supply chain breakdown all the way into a full-blown economic collapse, and eventually into a takeover of the nation one way or another. There'll be another part to this video that talks about steps we can take and things we can do to help us prepare for this type of situation. This situation is upon us, so we want to prepare now. If you're not already prepared, then this is the time to start. We'll discuss more than that in the second video on this topic. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. God bless. And for now, Seer Survivor, out.